I'm Joe Miserendino. I'm the Micropolis Coordinator here at BrickFair Virginia. Attended my first BrickFair in 2009. Saw what people were doing, got encouragement from some other builders. Displayed my first Micropolis creations in 2011. Really small layout, maybe 20 buildings. And it's grown to what you see here now. I've been building steadily for about 4 or 5 years. I've got about 100 buildings under my belt. And you know, it's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger until I take over.
And so you are the Micropolis Coordinator here at BrickFair, right?
It's an unofficial title. There really isn't a lot of super coordination in Micropolis. It's the most collaborative there is.
Yeah, so you just build a square, right? And you put it next to someone else's square, that's it?
Pretty much, yeah. That's essentially that's it, yeah. You sort of roll the dice. Everybody dumps their stuff on the table and you stand it upright. Boom, you got a city.
Totally. And so at this year's layout, how many people would you say have contributed in addition to yourself?
We had eight counting myself.
Okay.
Most contributed 3 or 4 buildings. Myself, I have, I think 97.
97.
Total.
So you are by far the most active here on the layout.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I do one-man shows at BrickFair, New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
And so for someone that's unfamiliar with the Micropolis standard, let's maybe take a look at these modules right here, and you can kind of give a rundown of what it's all about.
The standard itself was started at by Twin Lug out in Minneapolis. The basic scale of the builds is 9 feet high per brick, 7.5 feet wide per stud, and basically what we try to recreate is a big city, New York, Chicago kind of vibe in that scale. It's for people familiar with model trains, it's smaller than N scale.
Totally, totally. And so the cars are basically what, jumper plate with like a stud on top kind of thing?
The car is a jumper with a plate or a cheese slope. Trucks are maybe a 1x3 plate with some tile and a cheese slope.
Awesome, awesome.
We do an elevated rail line, and I mean most of my inspiration, like I say, comes from the big cities on the East Coast and Chicago.
Totally.
I'm a huge architecture fan, and that's what really drives my creations.
Awesome. And so maybe let's do a little bit of a run through of the layout here. Kind of give a little bit of a shout out to some of your favorite buildings as we're passing them.
Let's see. Where's John's stuff? John Stevens has a nice build on the other side. We'll do. This stuff these 2 builds are done by Denise from Wamalug, and she contributes almost every year. This is a neat build. This is my favorite by her. This is a neat technique though. This is Monorail Track.
Yeah, doesn't it look like the Aon Center in Chicago almost?
A little bit, yeah. But with the Monorail Track is a clever technique.
Yeah.
And it's nicely done. It's a little fragile, but it's very nicely done.
That ribbed rail kind of look, awesome. Yeah. And then here's the elevated rail line, right?
Yeah. This actually was a neat idea I got from a builder over in Europe who had designed it as an LDD element. And he posted it to Flickr, but he said he basically couldn't afford to build it. So I wrote to him and said, "Can I do it in brick and display it?" And he was all for it. So unfortunately, I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name right now, but he was from Norway, I believe.
Okay.
And it was a really neat design, and so we incorporated it here in the U.S.
Totally.
Based off of his work.
Awesome. And then moving on down here, we have a little bit of a waterfront, I see.
This is sort of inspired by the canals in Chicago.
Okay, Chicago River kind of thing, all that kind of stuff.
With all the bridges, and I just thought it was a neat effect. Gives a little break to the scenery. Gives a little more, viewpoint inside the layout when we're depth of field.
Totally.
So, moving along, we got that's a building by John. Neat building by John Stevens. Steebles on Flickr.
Yep.
The Octan building.
Octan Global Headquarters, something like that.
He's a very prolific builder. He's very good. His detail work is amazing.
One of the most talented guys out there, I'd say.
Yeah, and not just Micropolis.
Yeah.
In
Space.
Yeah, he's a really good guy. So we have a highway here that this was originally designed by Matt Gibbons down in C-Lug, and I kind of pirated his design a little bit. Now he's not here this year, but he's another really good builder that usually contributes a lot.
And it's a great design because the Micropolis standard is like raised up off of a base plate, and so this sort of makes
the natural the sunken road is real easy to do, and shout out to Matt for the neat design.
Awesome.
So Adrienne Drake was a new contributor this year. Adrienne's usually known for like things like the Serenity.
Yeah.
He put a piece in this year, the Cleveland Browns Stadium, and that actually won Best Micro.
That's awesome.
So first time.
Wow.
So.
Adrienne can't not win an award or something like that.
It's a law, I think.
And then is this building right here, to me this is eerily reminiscent of Mies van der Rohe's Martin Luther King Jr. Library in Washington, D.C.
I can't comment too much on it. You may be right. It's not mine. It's another building by Denise from Wamalog.
Oh, well, she's from the Washington area. Maybe there's something to that.
It's possible. She does the Dulles Terminal every year, too, so that's a possible connection.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, the more and more, yeah, definitely. Awesome.
This is one of my favorite builds. This is a hospital with a research cancer center attached to it and a helipad. It's actually one of my very early builds. It's one of the second or third building I did when I started building Micropolis, but it still remains one of my favorites.
It's awesome. It has to add an angle with some angle plates, doing some angly things.
I took a bunch of plates and started shuffling them like a deck of cards, and boom, there was a building. It's
awesome.
It's a pretty organic process.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these buildings, it's like you don't have to do a lot of master planning, a lot of infrastructure. Like if you're building a 10-foot tall skyscraper, I would imagine most of the work is like doing cross bracing and all this kind of stuff. Here you're allowed to really just kind of be creative very quickly.
You can. It's a very fast process. Most of my builds really don't take more than 6 to 8 hours start to finish. I don't design or plan anything.
Yeah.
Nothing's sketched, nothing's drawn. It's all organic. That's
awesome. And then coming along here, we have some more buildings.
Dan Pecora, he contributes a couple buildings every year. He's a pretty good builder. He usually goes small scale, but usually very nicely done.
Yeah. Shouts out to Dan. I'm very familiar with Mr. Danny. Damn it, Danny, I believe is the phrase been going around the weekend.
And this is another one of John's buildings. I kind of refer to it as the Enterprise Diner. All it's missing is a couple of engine pods, and you think the damn thing would take off.
And those trees are very sick, and we don't see too many of them on the layout. I see a couple here and there, but it's awesome to see those trees.
Yeah, those are a really neat design. That's one of John's. It's basically a Travis brick and just layered with tile and plate. It's a really clever design.
It's like a micro lull sphere almost,
It's really, it's a good, as I said, John's a good builder. It's a great design.
Awesome. Well, wonderful layout. Micropolis is always a pleasure to take a look at, and you're just a wonderful builder, and everyone that's contributed here, just wonderful stuff.
Thanks.
Awesome.
I appreciate it. All right, thanks, guys.